Hey, good afternoon. Happy Tuesday to you. Tuesdays at 2. I'm not sure if that's going to ever be a thing, but I thought today was kind of cute because we are Tuesday and it is 2 Central, 3 Eastern. And today on Under the Hood, my guest is the amazing, wonderful, beautiful Cuban American soprano Elizabeth Caballero. And I'm going to see if I have learned anything about how to add people to my feed. I guess I have to have viewers to request to join you on the video. So Liz, if you can see this, begin watching, and we'll see if we can figure this out. Again, my apologies. This is the second time I've tried to do this in the new capacity. I'm just going to send you a quick message. So I can invite you. I guess what has to happen is when we have a viewer or viewers watching the live feed, the new Facebook Live software allows you to invite them on the podcast. Here we go. Bert is watching. Thank you for being on, Bert. So anyway, today is season 3, episode 2, and like I said, we're going to be featuring the Cuban American soprano Elizabeth Caballero, and she should be on here shortly. But my thought for season 3 is to speak with singers, directors, managers who have been in the industry for a while and maybe even have, done a few different roles throughout the industry. And we're talking about how things were when they first got into the industry, how things have changed, what things are like now. There we are. Hello, Liz.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Okay.
I was just talking about how on season 3, my idea is to talk with singers and managers and stage directors and so forth who have been in the industry for a while and talk a little bit about what things were like when you first got into the industry, how things have changed and what your experiences are like now. And then looking towards the future, how we might go about doing things to help others and to where we see the industry going and what kind of exciting projects you have coming up and so forth. So first of all, thanks so much for agreeing to be on here with me. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
I don't think we've seen each other in a while. I was trying to remember the last time we sang together was like 10, 11 years ago when we did that Falstaff in Virginia, right?
Didn't we do the butterfly after in Kansas City?
Oh,
or was that the first thing?
That was before. That was like in 2011 or something.
Was it really the Falstaff, the last thing we did?
I think so. I don't know.
Holy cow.
Crazy how time flies, right?
Yeah, we're old.
Well, my beard is not getting any more dark. I think the gray has set in.
It's just highlights. It's highlights.
It's highlights. That's right. I like that. Well, let's get into it. Talk to me a little bit about, like, did you do one of those young artist training programs, or did you do a master's program, or how did you get into the professional side of this industry?
Well, I was really lucky when I started out, because I got into a young artist program immediately following after my graduation at the university. And
which university did you attend?
University of Miami.
Oh, okay.
University, and I just got my bachelor's in music. Nothing else. I wasn't planning on doing anything else. And I auditioned for the Florida Grand Opera Young Artist Program and got accepted right away.
There you go.
And yeah, it was a shock for me. It was the first thing I've ever, the first contract I ever received. It was a big contract. It was a big learning curve because it was a lot of things to learn at first. Yeah, that was a big experience, and I only did that for 1 year. Then following after that, I started, I kept on auditioning, and I got into the Maryland program for a summer, and I did that for 2 summers. And then I did the Adler program in San Francisco Opera after that. And soon after, my big break honestly came when I sang at New York City Opera when it was still at Lincoln Center. And I made my debut there as Don Elvira. And I have to, yeah, that was really my big break, because after the young artist programs, I had a really hard time in the young artist programs, because I don't think I and it's not to say that the universities didn't teach me right, okay? But I think you really just don't know until you are there and really doing it. And when I first received that first contract from Florida Grand Opera, I had to learn, I think I had to learn like Gilda, Fiordiligi, Michaela, Cleopatra, and Tatiana.
That you were covering, or you were singing,
covering all that, and with the possibility of singing 2 performances of Carmen and as Michaela.
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane. That was when Diana Soviero and Bernard Uzon were still in charge of the program, and it was a big contract. And then somewhere in the middle of it, they helped me out, and we made it a bit more feasible for me at that moment. And when I went to Marilla, that was where I learned how to sing proper recits, honestly, because I was supposed to cover, was it Fiordiligi? I think I said Fiordiligi. I was supposed to cover that, and they took that away because it was just too much for me. It was too close. And then, luckily enough, when I got invited to do Marilla, it was to sing Fiordiligi. So I finally did get to learn it, and I got to learn how to sing recits properly. And I loved my summers in Marilla. Those were that is like probably in my opinion, one of the best training programs ever. It was just unbelievable how much you learn, and those 11 weeks, so fast. But to sing with an orchestra, and to work with directors, and to work with other colleagues, it was just really cool, because it's just you, the young artist, just doing it, and you're not covering really anyone else. Or if you're covering another colleague of yours. It's not like you're learning with each other. You're all learning together. So it was those were the best summers, man. They were fantastic.
Did you do the Western Opera Theater tour that they did?
I did the second to last Western Opera Theater tour, which was the Cozy tour. And then the last one was the Bohème, which I wasn't able to do it because I had a contract. I was already starting to get work.
That's amazing. So, I mean, there's a little bit of trial by fire. I mean, you said you did this right out of undergrad. So you were like 22, 23?
I was 26.
Oh,
I was 26 because, yeah, I was a little older than a lot of the other undergrads, because I'm always a little behind, you know?
No.
So, yeah, I was a little older. And, I think that what happened too, a big important break for me that happened was, I think not winning, but I was one of the 10 finalists for the Met competition in 2001. And, yeah, I think that's, having that under my belt, and then getting invited into Marilla. I don't know. I think definitely a lot of luck was involved.
Well, you had been doing a lot, right, vocally.
Being in the right place at the right time, and knowing how to handle that luck. Because sometimes I can tell you of so many opportunities where luck was just tossed at me, and I didn't know how to handle it, and there it went. You know, so, but c'est la vie, that's life. So you live and learn. Yeah. And now I just hope that when another lucky break happens, that I'm able to do it.
Yeah. So in those first professional contracts after your young artist days, talk a little bit about the atmosphere, or the expectations, or the I don't know, your experiences, you know, being sort of new on the scene. And I think with the idea that we're going to eventually talk next about how things have changed in the last 20 years or so.
You know, I just started out, I never really started I started working with big A houses when I was training and stuff like that. But I think after doing my training, I just started to work with a lot of the regional theaters around the nation. And I find that the pressure even now, even as a professional singer now of 20, doing this for almost 25 years, I find that the pressure is a little less when you are in the regional house as opposed to in one of the bigger opera houses anywhere in the world, not only in the nation,
Sure.
Just because, yes, you're expected to show up and do the job and get it right and this and that. But I don't know, there seems to be like everyone is happy to have you there. And we're all happy to be there together and working it together, as opposed to when you go to one of the major opera houses, it's let's get this going, work, 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 work. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever sensed that feeling in when you
Well,
go
I think
to,
when there's more on the line, when it's a larger budget at
yeah,
hand, when there's more tickets to be sold,
exactly.
when there's, yeah, I mean, I
That
think
makes
that
sense.
there's, yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally understand. I mean, sometimes you have to remind yourself in some of the smaller regional houses, they may only do 6 performances, 8 performances per season, and that's 3 or 4 productions. But a lot of them only do one weekend of shows, right? And so
Mhm.
by the time you get done rehearsing and then you move into the theater, I remember one time going from, and that's the life, right? Like you might have one gig at an A house, and then the next gig is at a B house, and maybe you do a C house, and you're back in an A house. You're just kind of going around. Um, Sometimes when you find yourself in one of those smaller regional companies that only do performances, let's say, 6 times, 8 times a season, when you get into the theater, it seems like things kind of, things might have been great in the rehearsal process, but then the tech crew or the makeup people or what, for whatever reason, things might be like, okay, what, because I do notice there's a big difference between the people who are doing, hundreds of performances per season. That is like a well-oiled machine, at a place
Yeah,
like the Metropolitan Opera or Chicago or
absolutely.
wherever. But it is interesting to I mean, I look at it as like, wow, you guys are putting so much energy and effort into doing the thing, even though you only may do it, 3 or 4 productions a year, which might equal only 6 to 8 performances. Um, it is a different kind of gear shift to be like, oh, okay, right, right. It requires a great deal of patience for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think they enjoy it more because they don't do it as
yeah.
often. So they aren't, I don't want, I hate, sorry if I'm using this word but I don't mean it, but they aren't as jaded. You know what I
Oh, I know,
mean?
no, I hear you. I hear you. I can only imagine what a production stage manager at the Met or one of these houses that do 14, 18. I don't even know how many productions they do per season,
Yeah.
but you know, day in, day out, constant, constant, constant. Yeah, I would think that there is a little bit more like, oh, we're doing an opera. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they're always so excited to see you. That's one of the nice things when you go to a regional house. Like you said, they only do like maybe 3, 4 shows a season. So when you're coming in, oh yay, the
Well,
show's it's
rally,
exciting.
yeah.
So that feeling is always very nice, and which is one of the reasons why I'm thankful I work in a lot of the regional houses. When I've worked in A houses, the pressure that I find there is not enjoyable
Hmm.
for me.
And have you found that to change over the years, or have you gotten, has that been something that you've become more accustomed to since, you've been doing it for 25 years, or have you found that
Um,
to stay pretty
a
consistent
lot of
throughout your
things
career?
changed for me after pandemic.
Yeah, how so?
You know, I decided to take more priorities for myself as opposed to what needs to be done or what is expected of me. And I decided to what's important is me and my mental health and my ability to be happy or in a company where I am wanted, and appreciated,
Yeah,
and not just be at a gig for saying that I have that gig,
right, right.
you know?
I do think before the pandemic, it was just, at least for me, it was just like, sure, that's going to make enough money, and my manager thinks that that's a worthwhile thing to do. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Exactly.
And then everything shuts down for 2.5 years or so. And you do start to prioritize things and discover what is most important to you. And for me, it's boiled down to like 3 things, right? It's like, obviously, the money. that you might be making. Number two, I'm doing my thumbs up. The money, the music or the role that you're going to be singing,
The
and then
role.
the people who are involved. And
Exactly.
it's got to be two of the
Yeah.
three. You're right. If it's only one of those three, it's really hard to be like,
It's hard
okay, yeah,
to be happy.
yeah,
It's really hard to because I mean, because let's think about it. You'll be there the most, a month. So, and and if you're in one of these long gigs, where they do like recently I've been doing a lot of these more European gigs where they do like 10, 14 shows.
right.
So you're there for a long time. It better be something worthwhile. Better be something worthwhile. So, and honestly, I'm shocked that I'm even still singing after pandemic, because I thought that after that pandemic, that was it. I was gonna have to find something else to do, because theater's dead, opera's dead. Opera's already, in my opinion, a dying art, sadly.
Well, and I think
Um,
that I just out of curiosity, I mean, I wonder truly how many years, centuries, decades, whatever, that has been said. Because I tell you what I see, obviously, is that opera companies are paring things down a little bit. Instead of doing, I don't know, 5 productions, they're only doing 4. Or instead of doing, 5 performances of each show, they're now only doing 3, or whatever it might be, right? It's slowly, let's say, uh, diminishing in that way. But I don't know, as an art form, if it's ever going to truly disappear. I think it's just got to reinvent itself time and time
It's
and
just
time
going to be
again.
very, very difficult, because one of the big challenges that is happening in the art form nowadays is the fees. And
Well,
I'm
I'm
still,
sure. So yeah, talk about the fee change between when you first got into the career and then fees that you've experienced now.
well, I started out with a pretty decent fee, and that was the fee that I started with, and that was the fee that I had for the longest time. And sadly, that is, it's so hard to nowadays to even be able to get that fee
Mm.
nowadays, which is so sad, because let's give you a number. $5,000 per performance,
Mhm.
okay? Which is, kind of the norm for most regional houses for, a leading role, right?
Sure, sure.
Um, and so let's say you do 2 shows, that's $10,000 out of that gig. You're away for a month, 3 weeks a
Well,
month.
take
Okay.
10% off for management,
10%
take
off
30%
for
off for
management,
taxes.
plus, you have to pay taxes on that. When I first started out, after all that, I would maybe take home 765, maybe after all
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
that was great money a month. That does not make good money nowadays.
And
That
it
is
does seem
hard.
like things cost a lot more, but yet we're
Things
kind
do
of paid
cost a
the
lot
same.
more. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. Gas, food, travel alone. And so
Yeah.
when we're traveling, we have some this actually, I can't remember who was the colleague that posted this, but it was a really wonderful post where she was talking about how difficult it is, when you're going away on these gigs and you have to find housing. And then if you live alone, do you rent out your space, because now you're paying your mortgage or your rent? And you also have to pay for the housing where you're staying at, if it's one of these places that don't cover your housing, because not all places cover the housing,
Right.
depending on the fee. It all kind of sort of balances out, but not really. So it's just really interesting that, you know fees have not
Well,
gotten,
let's
fees
say
are
this: there
hard.
hasn't been an equal increase of
No,
fee structure the way that there has been an increase in inflation,
exactly.
right? And Bert Johnson just commented, and you don't do it every month, right? So yeah,
No,
yeah, it's one thing if you've got gig after gig after gig
exactly.
after gig. Well, then it's, yeah,
Yes.
okay, I can make that figure out. But let's say you go a month or two and you don't have a gig, or four
So you
months or
have to
whatever
save
it might
up.
be,
You have to
right?
save up some money, or I mean, I don't know. But the best advice I can give young singers is, either you have to find really amazing family support, number one. And there's nothing wrong. I wish if I could go to my younger self and talk to her, tell her to get maybe a business degree, business management, something where I can, or some other job, some a double major where I could find something to fall back. But then again, maybe having that thing to fall back wouldn't have given me, the
Right.
the
The drive,
determination or the
determination, the
drive
energy. Right.
to do it,
Yeah.
because I need it to do it.
Right. I do. Yeah, I do hear you on that. So talk a little bit about the climate today when you're working with your manager and you're looking at the landscape. You said you're starting to do more international engagements over in Europe these days. What's the difference between, for you at least, that you've seen between a rehearsal process over in Europe as opposed to a rehearsal process here in the States?
Well, Europe, especially when it comes to Austria, Germany, Switzerland, these countries, they have it figured out how to do live theater, in my opinion, because um, in country Austria, for example, Klagenfurt, country Austria, it's this tiny little theater, perfect size, about 750 seats, amazing orchestra, unbelievable orchestra. And that's not one of the best, because the one in Switzerland was even bigger, and that's another, even better. I mean, it's just amazing. The costumes that went into that, the production that went into it. It's just, they get the government helps them out a lot.
Oh,
So
sure. Yeah, yeah.
they have to use the money properly, and they do. They have to use it. So you see it. You really see it in the productions. They may not be to your liking, some of these European productions, because they don't tend to be very traditional, but I think that's so cool and that's exciting. And they like to, keep it different. In Europe, you grow up listening to opera, I think. And here, sadly, in the United States, we don't. I didn't know about opera until I went to college.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think, I think that most kids in the United States are somewhat like that, unless you are, you grew up with parents that were listening to it. And how many people do we know that really sit down and listen to it, unless you are an opera queen?
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate that my mom was a high school choir director.
There you go.
So she took me to see my first opera when I was in high school. And probably would have, she sang in the Houston Symphony Chorus, and I remember going to see some of the outdoor, symphonic things like the 1812 Overture during July 4th concerts and stuff like that. So I was a bit surrounded by it, but only because she was, so folks that, didn't have family members that were involved in something like that. Yeah, it's not part of the normal everyday culture.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of it also depends on where you grew up.
And it's unfortunate that it's not part of the normal everyday culture, because it is beautiful. I mean, my introduction to opera was Kill the Wabbit.
Right. And thank God for that, right? Like,
yes, thank God for that.
It is amazing how they do sneak in. Now a lot of it's Carmina, or a lot of it's there's some certain like hits that certainly get repeated, Beethoven 9, so forth.
Yeah.
But at least there's some tunes that kind of almost doesn't matter where you grew up. If you've watched TV or movies or something, you're like, oh, I recognize that.
Every once in a while, it's nice to see a commercial that pops up that has, like, there was one that popped up that I think had Casta Diva with Maria Callas. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh, they actually used Maria Callas. Like it's sometimes what they do, which pisses me off in commercials, is that they'll have an opera singer, and it doesn't. It's not opera.
It's a little less than. It's a singer they hired for the commercial.
A singer they hired for the commercial to sing the piece. And but when you hear, like, when they use, Maria Callas, or like when you hear like a real, like a singer, you're like, oh wow, they're actually using like real singing.
There's a lot of Largo Alfactotums in the old ragu spaghetti commercials. You're like,
right,
what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, I hear you. I do think that things can sometimes be cyclical, and I remember my teacher, Gerald Dolter was my first teacher in undergrad, and he won the Met
877 cash now. I would love that commercial. I would love to do that commercial.
Yeah, right. So my first teacher won the Metropolitan Opera auditions in 1984, and I think for singers of that generation, after you did your undergraduate degree in music, you just went to Germany or Austria or Switzerland, and you got a fest contract and an ensemble, and you got a lot of experience. and then you either stayed over there or you came back to the States and started singing with some companies. But I think that the reason for that was that there just weren't as many training programs in the United States at that time, you
No,
know, in the mid 80s, late 80s, right?
there weren't that many opera companies when you think about it also. That's why companies like the Western Opera Theater
Right?
existed, because they would go around and tour. You know, you had the Western Opera Theater, you had New York City Opera that would tour, the Met would also tour.
Yeah.
So they would go and tour in all the places of the country that didn't have, you know, an opera house or an opera theater nearby.
Then it seems like in the 90s, all these opera companies started
Yeah.
popping up and all these different, you know, and so, okay, all right, maybe now some of those are closing down or have been closing down or shortening, you know, reducing their season somewhat. But perhaps, you know, this next upcoming generation, as we look forward, maybe they go back to doing what our teachers before us did, you know, and
Yeah.
rely on the experiences that opera companies overseas can offer.
I've been telling a lot of the young singers that ask me for advice that if I that to try and get a fest contract if they really want to do it, because the stability and the of creating art in a place, um maybe it might not be home, but it is a place where you're learning a lot. You're probably learning a new language, you're learning new customs, new everything. And all the roles that you're going to learn, all the people you're going to meet, all the conductors, all the directors, other singers, it's so you're going to learn so much. And at the same time, you're making an income. You're making your livelihood
Yeah.
by doing a fest contract where, you know, you might sing a lot of compromario work, but you might also get the opportunity of singing a leading role in another one of their productions, especially if you prove yourself, you know, when you first, you know, get into the company. And all the companies in Europe, they all have fests. They all have, and one of the sad things that I've heard too that's been happening in Europe, sorry to be jumping around so much, is that
That's okay.
unfortunately a lot of the guest position invitations are kind of being dwindled, and they're starting to use more of their fest singers,
Yeah, and I
especially
mean, I
more in the
remember.
regional Europe.
Right. I remember when I was over in Berlin, I had a friend of mine that was fest at the Deutsche Oper,
Hmm.
and I just, you know, I had heard about it, but like literally watching this guy have a music rehearsal at 10 a.m. for one show, and then do a dress rehearsal at 2 p.m. for a different show,
Was it
and
Seth
then a
Carico
performance. What's
you're talking
that?
about? Is it Seth Carico you're talking about?
Seth Carico, yes.
How did I know you were
Carico.
talking about him?
Yeah, Seth.
See,
Also Noble.
he's an American
Yeah,
who actually did that. He
yeah,
left and went to Europe,
yeah,
and he's done his entire career in Europe, his
yeah.
entire career,
Yeah,
and
he
he's having a wonderful career.
Noel Boulez was over there also
Yeah,
at Deutsche Oper, and
Noel's great too.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do think that there are opportunities around the globe to, you know, for young singers to experience this art form and to get involved in the art form and to find a family, so to speak, that, you know, you don't feel like, because I do feel like a lot of the talk is like doom and gloom, you know, dying art form, oh, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, I don't know if you have judged any singing competitions recently, but there are some damn good singers out there doing some amazing
There
stuff from
are
the
a
high
lot
school
of
level
wonderful
up.
singers. There are a lot of wonderful. For example, here's a great company which I knew of when I was in San Francisco Opera, but I really didn't like know. San Jose Opera.
Oh yeah.
That is a fantastic place that is kind of set up as a fest
Well, yeah.
opera. You know,
Talking about how things have changed, right? Like Opera San Jose was created by Irene Dallas, and
absolutely.
it was absolutely the only fest
Yeah.
program that existed in America at the
Hmm.
time. And then over the years, it's sort of changed and morphed into a thing where they bring in certain people to sing specific roles just for that show. But
No,
I think
they brought me in. They brought me in because I don't think I would have. Well, actually, no, I lie, because after my experience, my experience with them, then they asked me, this would be a great company for me to try something out that I would want to try. For
right.
example, because you know, it's a small place. It's a beautiful little theater. like under 1,000 seats too, great
Yeah.
orchestra, and the production quality, holy crap, the costumes and the wigs and the makeup. I was blown away,
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
It
Well, I
is,
think they had it set up really, really well from the get-go.
yeah, yeah, it's a great, it's, I would recommend that place. For as many young singers out there that would like to be able to do more, because of the kind of singer that I am, the kind of person that I am, I don't learn so much from sitting and watching. I learn from getting up and doing.
Yeah.
And that was one of my frustrations when I was doing the young artist circuit, that I was sitting around and watching a lot. And I didn't feel like I learned from that. I learned from getting up, doing it, making mistakes, getting back up and doing it and trying to get it right. That's how I learn. And so that for San Jose Opera is a fantastic program to be able, or a fantastic opera company to be able to do that, where they will hire you right out of college and train train you enough to be able to be prepared to sing possibly a leading role, which is what,
That's the
I
goal.
think it's fantastic. I think
Yeah,
it's,
I mean,
and it's fun. That's what they do in Europe too. If you're a fest singer in Europe and your contract says that you're going to be doing this and this, and then when it's time to do like your first Mimi, for example, you're going to coach it really well with them before they send you up there.
right, right. Which is not always the truth in America. I
Exactly.
mean, you might have some, ideally, but I've certainly seen people kind of get thrown into the wild. It's like, okay, you're on, go.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking ahead, what are some of the things that you have upcoming that you're excited about, and what do you think, or what do you focus on these days as you go to your next engagements, that either excite you or make it, I don't know, like what is it that you try to focus your energies towards?
I focus my energy on trying to do roles that still excite me and still are interesting to me. Um, because especially when I'm gone for a very long time, there has to be, it has to be exciting. I
And what
can't.
is a long time?
3 months.
Oh wow, for one gig,
Yeah.
because the
Um,
performances are spread out so much.
yeah, 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 yeah. And also, and you have like, since it's a new production, that's the other thing too, with a lot of new productions in a lot of these theaters, even the regional theaters in Europe, it's 6 weeks of rehearsal. So that's
Right.
a long rehearsal period. And interestingly enough, most of them only rehearse Monday through Friday. So you have the weekend off, which you're like, why? Just give me one day, let's get this over with,
Right, right.
But they love their time off,
Sure, sure,
which is,
sure.
which is great. And it's great. But no, that next for me, I just sang my first Tosca last season in Switzerland, and that was wonderful, great experience. I'm going to be going back to Klagenfurt next season to open up with Tosca yet again. And then I'm coming back home here. I only have 2 contracts next season, and I'm totally happy with that. Because honestly, anything could change. So many things. Like this season for me, I got 2 jump ins at the last minute, like the Florencia with Opera San Jose, and then the Butterfly with Opera Naples. So anything can always happen.
Yeah.
But honest to God, if I just have these 2 contracts, I'm fine, because like I said, I have wonderful family support, which is important. So I always say that I'm not rich, but I help pay the bills doing what I love to do. So that's rich enough for me.
I could not agree with you more on all of those accounts. First of all, I would love to do Tosca with you. I think
That
that
would be
let's
amazing.
put that out into the universe right now.
Let's put it out there.
There
Yeah.
you go. But yeah, I do think that, like, Seth Rogen said on this video that I saw on something the other day, where it's like, if you could just keep doing the thing that you're doing, if it makes you happy, and if you love making art, just don't quit. Keep going, keep going. And he talked about all these people that you'd never heard of, like, the Gandalf, from Lord of the Rings. It's like, whoever heard of, see, oh my God, I can't even remember the actor now. Was that Sir Ian McKellen?
I
Is that who
never
that
saw
was?
Lord of the
Oh my God.
Rings.
Well, I don't know if that was the right person, and that sounds ridiculous now that I say that
I've
out
never
loud.
seen any
But he
of
was
those
talking
things.
about different people that you've never heard of until they made like a huge splash. But they had
Right.
just been doing it forever
Forever.
and just existing and continuing to do the work.
Yeah, you know who was like that? What's the guy from Star Trek, the bald guy?
Oh, Picard.
The
Yeah, Captain
Picard.
Picard. Yeah, what's his
Jean-Luc
name?
Picard. Yeah, he was a theater actor for decades.
Right.
And maybe like I can't think of anything that he did before that. And
Anybody
then
watching,
that
feel free to put these names that we can't come up with in the comments. And if you have
because we're
any
old.
questions for Liz and I, please comment in the chat, and we'll try to answer your questions.
We can't remember because we're old, and there's a lot of music stuck in there.
There's a lot of music in the head. Speaking of, I just had a jump in this past weekend.
I saw that.
Yeah, I went down to Houston for their Butterfly, and I had not sung that role in over a year. And yeah,
Isn't it crazy how it just flows back?
It's kind of crazy. You start hearing the music, and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
I know how to do this.
and it just comes back when you learn something so well, and it's so in you. It just comes back. It's like we're getting back on the bike and riding it. It really is.
Right. I totally agree with that. And I think that Alfonso Cherry said J.G. Whitworth. Oh, he was talking about the opera commercials that when we were talking about that.
Yeah.
877 cash.
877 cash now. I would love to have had that gig. Holy crap. Are you kidding me?
They laughed all the way to the bank.
Yes, they
My God.
did. And everyone remembers that commercial.
That's hysterical. So you get to go back, do another Tosca. I mean, talk a little bit about that role. How first of all, I can't believe you hadn't done that before until just last season.
Oh, I waited. I waited for that girl. I wanted to wait because it's a role that requires me to use my entire voice from top to the very, very bottom. And I'm not a chest-oriented singer. I'm more of a head-oriented singer.
Okay.
So I just turned 50. Okay. So I wanted to wait until a certain age to be able to do it because I wanted to sing it, and I wanted to do it with my voice. I didn't want to sound like Tibaldi or like Callas or like Freni, like none of them. It was my voice, and it may not be the voice that you like for it, but this is the way I'm singing it, and this is how you're gonna like, and this is how it is. And some people like this, some people didn't, but that's how everything is in life, And I got to sing my Tosca, and the conductor was fantastic. Seth was my Scarpia.
Oh, nice.
We had a wonderful time. Talk about a fantastic singing actor,
Yeah.
That act too was always fire. It's one of the few moments that I can remember, that one and our Butterfly in Kansas City, where it just seemed like, I don't know, like time. First, it was like a combination of time going by so fast and not fast enough at the same time, like standing still. Like, exactly you know what I mean? Like, it was like at the moment I was there in every moment. Like if the house would have caught on fire, I wouldn't have noticed because the orchestra was still playing and I was just still going. It was just so, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's so thrilling. So, and because of the Tosca was so much more recent, that one I remember so much more, but it was such fire, so much fun. And when it stops being fun, that's when I'll stop.
Right.
That's when I'll stop. Yeah. And there have been some moments when I have found myself not having fun, and it's because maybe emotionally or mentally I was not in the right place at that time.
Right.
But you still get through it. You still do it. The fee maybe wasn't helping because I'm sorry, the fees are getting ridiculous. We're going to go back to that. It's ridiculous, inflation, and we're not, and I don't know, we're not making enough anymore.
What I noticed is that there's a significant gap between what big houses are able to pay and what the smaller companies are able to pay. And yet there seems to be obviously the desire for smaller companies to get the best singers they can get.
Yeah.
But then there's this, can you come and do it for this? And it's like, Okay. Yeah. 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 Let's see if we
Well,
can.
can you give me a car rental? Are you going to offer housing? You know, you have to, then you start to do that. You have to start getting your manager to do the haggling, I guess. I don't
Oh
know,
yeah. 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 Of
which
course, the negotiations.
sucks. But
Oh, Bert
at
just
least,
asked, what is the repertoire that is new on your horizon? So you talked about Tosca. Are there other
yeah.
roles that you're sort of waiting
Well,
for that you want to do?
I think I'm toying with the idea of maybe doing more Germanic repertoire, like
Oh
Arabella,
yeah.
and more, and maybe perhaps the Marschallin, and even I work with Greg Bookalter here in South Florida a lot, and he's even mentioned that he can hear me singing a Salome,
I
which
yeah.
and especially in those size theaters,
Oh yeah.
absolutely, I can
800
definitely do it.
seats. Yeah.
Uh, so and I like these roles that are like these that require you to be not only a singer but also an
Of
actor.
course.
I really, really love these roles that require like singing, acting, actoring. I invented a new word. Um,
No, it's
but
true though. I mean,
yeah,
it's true. I mean, I encourage everyone, no matter what role they're singing, to look at it as a singing, acting role,
absolutely. I
right?
always tell, that's what I tell a lot of the young girls whenever they're, because I'm not a teacher, I'm not really a coach, but every once in a while I might like help out, you know, a younger singer with some repertoire. And one of the things that I always tell them is to read it like a monologue and
Yes.
recite it like a monologue. You know, in front of the mirror, you know, mi chiamano Mimi, ma il mio nome è Lucia. La storia mia è bella. You know, just recite it like a monologue, just like that.
Yeah.
And then bring that, those inflections that you discover as you're singing it as a doing it as an actor, bring that into your singing. And
Yeah.
it's
That
so
that is absolutely one of the crucial steps in my step-by-step process that I teach for how to learn music. And I think without that, you're relying so much on, you know, it might be a language that you're unfamiliar with. And unless you force yourself to truly take the text out of the music and use that as the only tools that you have in that moment to be able to communicate with, you kind of end up stranded or at least relying way too much on what the music does. And then,
exactly. And you're the one that's emoting that
yeah,
message. So this is with leader, this is with art song, anything, with anything that you sing, musical theater, whatever it is, you are the one that's delivering the message of that song or that aria that you're performing. How are you going to do it as the emoter of that moment? Is it just going to be just a little song, or are you really going to tell me how you as a performer it's such a beautiful way to bring the audience in with you.
yeah.
We're all
Well,
together.
and I
Wait,
think that in today's, you know, art scene in the United States, where we do have perhaps fewer opportunities than we had maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I think what we're talking about is even more important that we do as artists on the stage, so that no one has the, you know, the days of park and bark have long been over.
long
But I think
been
that
over.
when an artist truly does commit to what it is that they're doing and stays in that spontaneous zone of, like you said, it's like time is going by too quickly but yet not slow enough or
Yeah,
too slow, you know, it really is, I think, a matter of that, like, producing in spontaneous moments that I think is what really connects with the audience, right?
yeah, yeah. And it's so much fun when you can just let that vulnerability show.
Yeah.
Because and it's you're vulnerable, but at the same time you can still hide behind that character. You know what I
Oh, of
mean?
course. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And a
Yeah. You
lot of
get to be
times
somebody
it's very
different.
therapeutic. Holy cow. You know, oh my God, I've had so many therapy sessions
Well,
on the stage. Oh, yeah.
I do think the other thing that has changed a lot since we both came into this industry is sort of like um, the air, the support, the um, uh, opportunity for mental health in the arts in a real positive way, right? Like, I don't know, I just feel for so long the expectation was that you just, everyone should just be, let's go, come on, da, da,
Yeah.
da, you know. And so I do think that there's been some of that that has uh you know, like any pendulum does, it swings and maybe swings over a little too far and then it comes back and
Well,
we find balance.
yeah.
But I do think it's important that when we are finding that kind of vulnerability in ourselves as artists, some people might have a trickier time to deal with it than others. And, I don't know. I know that, now having intimacy directors involved in some of the scenes, on one hand, it's like, God, why hasn't that been there the whole time?
Exactly.
Then again, something I saw the other day, there was like a very famous movie star who can't stand working with intimacy directors because she feels like it blocks her spontaneity or something. So, I mean, again, it's all about finding the balance in all of these things. But I do think that we're doing it these days in a way that hopefully and ideally is supportive for all of the artists involved, which will hopefully ideally make for a better show product, at the end of the day.
I am noticing that a lot more directors are asking singers, is it okay if we they're not just saying we're going to do this and this is how it is. No, they are willing to work more with you, as opposed to it's my show and this is how it is.
Yeah.
And conductors the same way too. I'm finding it that I don't know, or maybe I'm noticing it more with me because I'm old and jaded and they can't fix me anymore. But maybe with a younger person, they'll definitely try.
Well, let's hope that we can continue to be positive leaders in this industry, and lead the way for those who are getting into it. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story.
Thank you for inviting me. I was really humbled by it.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. Well, I sincerely miss you, and I really do mean I would love to do this Oscar. I'd love to do anything with you.
I know.
You're an incredible performer.
Likewise.
And, what is the next thing that you have coming up?
I have the vacation, baby.
Oh, there you
the next thing will be Tosca.
The best.
Yeah, I leave in August for Austria, and I'll be there until November. Then I come back for the holidays, and then the next thing will be the Carmen back here at FGO, which, so funny enough, it will be almost 25 years to the date that I made my professional debut with the same role in the same company.
Is this for Micaela?
For Micaela, yeah.
Florida Grand.
At Florida Grand.
Wow.
Funny enough, yeah.
That's amazing. See,
and I love that. I love that that at my age I can still sing roles that I sang back then, and I'm still singing, and I'm learning new roles. It's like I'm very proud of myself that I can say this. I mean, I hope it's not egotistical or whatever, but the fact that I can still sing a lot of the same repertoire. I can still sing Traviata. I can still sing Mimi. I can still and bring in all this bigger repertoire and sing it well, or sing it with my voice.
Absolutely.
That is one thing that I want to make sure that young singers out there get stuck in their head, which is, it took me forever. You need to find appreciation for your sound. You may not like it, you may not love it, whatever. There's other sounds, other people's voices that you wish you would sound out, but it doesn't matter. That is your sound, and you need to appreciate it. Because if you don't appreciate it, then
how are other people going to learn to appreciate it, right?
Exactly. So just learn to appreciate it and learn to use it to the best of its ability. And if someone doesn't like you, someone else will.
It's a very subjective industry that we find ourselves
Absolutely.
in. But I think that, getting back to what we were talking about before, if we are creating in the moment and are committed to what it is that we're telling this, in the midst of telling the story, right? I don't know. You're either at a level where that is going to be how you make your living doing that professionally, or it's not. And I think that throughout a variety of different levels, whether it be in school, passing your sophomore barrier, or getting accepted to a graduate program, or finding acceptance into a young artist training program, signing with a manager, or contacting companies and then finding that they reply back or they don't. There are a lot of different things that kind of teach you through time, like, maybe you need to do something different, or maybe you need to think about what it is that you are doing. But I do think that understanding and realizing that as singers, what makes us unique is our own instruments. And so we should not ever feel like we're trying to imitate anyone else, but rather the exact opposite, right? It's like, how do I find my unique sound?
It took me a long time to accept that because, you know, you always want imitation is the best form of flattery, right? That's what they
Right.
say, right? So, and for the longest time, it was Freni for me. Oh my God, I wanted to be Mirella Freni, you know? But I don't have that sound. I have my own
Right.
sound. And it took me a long time to appreciate it because I would do it and it'd be fine and whatever. I would get good reviews. The company was happy, but somehow when I would hear myself in the recording, I was like, that would ruin it for me. Like, really? They're all that great, you know, great reviews, great. The company's happy. I'm coming back. And I listen to one little snippet and it's like, oh man, I sound so squeaky or whatever, you know?
Squeaky. To use the technical terms.
Exactly. So yeah, and what I mean, and it was me doing it to myself. So
Right. Right.
if you just learn to appreciate and learn to accept and love your sound, I think that solves a lot of the problems in this business for you to because I think you're unstoppable. If you think you're the greatest, you know, thing since sliced bread, you are unstoppable. And
Yeah.
that really is how it is. I mean, you've seen the greatest of the greats. They're out there sounding like crap, but they're selling it like it's gold. And you're eating it up because it's amazing. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Confidence is key.
Confidence is the key. That is the only thing. You can, I mean, and Anna, it's just amazing. I just wish I would have learned that sooner, but
Yeah.
here we are. I'm
Here we
50 and
are.
I'm still doing it. And hopefully I have more confidence now. And if you don't like it, screw you.
Well, what a better way to end the conversation. Liz, thank you so much for being with us today. So great to see you again, and I hope you have a phenomenal vacation.
Thank you.
And toi 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 for your
Sure.